getting getting started. As I said, Joey Connect, senior leader, Proteus. Look forward to kind of walking through the big challenge today. So, um, I'm going to assume all of you or many of you here are obviously part of a smaller mid-sized agency, and there's a lot of challenges that are going on. And if you look at obviously the existential threat is some elements related to obviously AI and some other the technologies around there, but still within the top five for agencies is still kind of what I would call traditional engagement challenges, especially with smaller to mid-sized agencies, because you have limited resources available to you, right? And that's a big challenge, right? You don't have as many team members. A lot of times you are player and coach. What I mean by that is you are sometimes doing selling, you are sometimes delivering, right? Many a times there's quite a bit of challenges in the smaller to mid-sized groups because you're doing highly relationship-based selling, obviously highly relationship execution, and you're just juggling a lot of hats. So that there's quite a few just still huge challenges that are threats to agencies. And so kind of the top five that come from our clients. Obviously, these are conversations with our clients, but then just in a broader knowledge base and research, obviously, of our clientele, these are still major threats for you guys. And so I just want to kind of bounce through a couple of these, and then we're going to kind of take some of these concepts and drive into these a little bit more to help better identify, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a platform called Engage, which is heavily used by agencies to help with relationship sales, getting the first project from your first new client, then heavily also used for project delivery. Now, we're not a traffic system like Workamajig or anything like that. It's more the customer relationship and updates and things of that nature. And then, of course, cross-selling additional projects and maintaining relationship with the client so that you get that cross-sell, upsell, or phase two of the projects, right? So ultimately, we're in the business of helping you generate revenue and keep revenue as you continue to grow, but doing that at scale when you have limited resources, right? And so that's just as the backdrop, that's going to really be where we are, where a little bit of work here can have a huge return to your firm. Okay. So still big challenges, obviously, for agencies right now: client acquisition, of course, and retention, right? And it's the nature of the business. A lot of times agencies are founded, and many of you probably don't have people on your team who officially have the title business development. A lot of times in small to medium-sized agencies, as I said, it's player coach. A lot of people doing a lot of different jobs. I'm not saying either way, but just a lot of times, typically, that's what you're seeing there. So it's hard to attract new clients because ironically, we had a webinar earlier that was, feast or famine. When you're real busy, you're not selling as much. When you're selling a lot, obviously, you get new projects, but it's that vicious cycle that can continuously happen. And I think everybody on this call knows exactly what I'm getting at. Managing expectations. This is kind of a lot of times of a challenge for agencies. And there's different ways of how to communicate expectations and manage expectations. Everybody here is also on the clock. If you're not basically proving ROI and communicating kind of consistently to the clients that their investment is coming back to them, you're going to be in big trouble, because there's another agency. I think small to mid-size, there's about 45,000 agencies alone in the US. And of course, as everybody knows, there's pressure from AI. There's also a lot of in-housing that is going on. So there's just a lot of things that you all need to be considering as you're obviously out trying to acquire net new customers, keep those customers, and deliver them the results and expectations that they desire, including the communication and visibility. So another one.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
I appreciate that. 1, 2, 3, 4. On my fourth item, I'm scaling. It's one time every webinar. I'm sure many of you do webinars. There's always one thing that always pops up. We had one time I had a real deal argument going on in the background, like between coworkers. It was epic. I think that's funny. I appreciate that. Scaling operations efficiently. obviously, as I mentioned, you have limited teams, and so how do we do this at an effective model and ultimately build a pool, right? Ultimately, the idea is compound interest. You have a pool of opportunities and relationships, and then you work through them. And a lot of that is through education, right? Like I'm preaching to the choir here, but a lot of the times we have seen, and bear with me here, this might sound critical, but a lot of times advertising agencies, marketing agencies, digital agencies, whatever you want to say, they're kind of like carpenters, where the carpenter's house is never done. A lot of times you're delivering great value and services to your clients, but you're not necessarily putting that attention into your own business and taking those things and driving and creating a big pool and educating that pool. And through that education, people dropping through the sales funnel, getting into your sales process. And then, of course, how do you do all this at scale when you're a small agency, right? And you might be chuckling or you might be getting mad at me because that sounds very critical, but ultimately at the end of the day here, we're trying to make you successful. And a lot of times, because I've worked with hundreds of agencies, I know that that's a common thread to the group. A lot of peaks and valleys, a lot of struggling there. And then standing out in a crowded marketplace, right? Ultimately, every client you have agencies right now. That's just the threat matrix. And so there's a lot of challenges out there because it's highly competitive. In some cases, it comes across to customers as highly commoditized also. And so how do you empower basically your agency to frame everything in the way that it needs to be framed to make sure you win those deals and or keep your current clients, because somebody's always trying to take your clients, right? So it's really a battleground out there. And this can dramatically change the success of your agency. So let's get into it. Like these are overarching. So there's a lot of contributors to this that I want you to kind of self-assess on here, because the self-assessment really allows you then to identify one or two of these that you can attack first to have immediate impact to your agency and your teams overall, right? So a lot of this is truly, that's what I said at the beginning of these webinars. Um, we're in the business of helping people win and grow, but in order to win and grow, you have to be honest, and candid is one of our values in our enterprise. And so when you look at these, you got to kind of say, yes, do we do that? Do we do that all the time? No. But do we do it a lot of time? Yes. And what happens is what you'll start to figure out is you're not putting as much effort you think into these areas, which can dramatically affect over a year, 2 year, 3 year period, the opportunities, right? So literally, the first one is focus on client work over sales. When you're that player coach, when you're a smaller agency, even if you're the owner, you're being drug into everything, right? And as you get more clients, those clients want to work with certain leaders. And so a lot of times it's really hard to get consistency of engagement, not only with maybe net new clients, current clients, and quite frankly, past clients. There's a huge opportunity for agencies because a lot of times the relationships sometimes feel transactional, where they could have been much more longer, more better, proper cross selling and education of where you could help them in other places. We'll get to that here in a second, but a lot of times we see agencies struggle with literally the amount of time they are actually engaging in new business activities or maintaining relationships and educating on how they could help the businesses, aka that results in lack of a sales pipeline. And again, I know in agency speak, or the agency world, it is sales, but ultimately it's building high value relationships with leaders within organizations, whether that's marketing directors, product leads, VPs, CMOs. I mean, you name it, we have clients that are in all spaces. But ultimately, for the business to have consistency and growth and consistency of reducing peaks and valleys and being able to add more talent to your agency and to be able to do more things, you need to have a pretty wide pipeline, because ultimately things will filter through, right? And then that's inconsistent outreach. So a lot of times this is for instance, in agencies, this is a simple recipe that works extremely well. Like just communicating to your client types or by what product and services they're using from you, tips and tricks, industry trends, other things like that, which are just soft. A lot of times agencies rely on sharing works that have they've done for others as like case studies and stuff, while sometimes that's nice and relevant, what ultimately people are looking for is a partnership and someone protecting their ass, aka I'm a CMO, aka I'm a VP of marketing. Send me the information that you think is relevant to me as resources so I look good in my own board meetings. Make sense? So that kind of consistent outreach can maintain relationship and opportunities. It's just real inconsistent, or you're just waiting for RFPs, which typically is too late. Okay. Another one. Continuing basically here. Another thing to consider is, again, very few small to mid-sized agencies actually have official dedicated sales teams. It's maybe leadership, the founders, other things of that nature, but that can be a pretty big threat. And also, how can you maximize the impact of their time to drive value, obviously, in this. We also have seen another consideration for your agency is failure to productize services. And what I mean by that, it was really relevant in the past. Still, I'd say it's not a clear roadmap to clients when you have failure to productize services. What I mean by productize services is show me a vision of how the services you can provide me today, then phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, how those would all interact and work together. It isn't literally productizing, air quote, like you have a product that you're selling, but you are selling a process, a methodology, or something. And clearly educating the customers on that flow is very mission critical to blocking out other vendors from coming in. As everybody knows in this call, specialization is very prevalent in this space. And so, how do you block out another vendor getting in by coming in for X and then taking Y and Z from you, right? And so, just it's a battleground, you know this. And so, failure to productize your services and thinking as something as a project with them, or I don't care if you're a AOR either. Like literally everybody's going after you. So ultimately, making sure that it feels like to the client you're taking them through a prescribed journey of products and services. And I understand it's not a literal product, but it can be, right? So think through that on yourself, because all of this leads to basically being able to do engagement with customers at scale in all phases of the relationship, which is how you grow your agency. Relying on referrals, I mean, if someone hasn't told you that already, we have a whole referral system and process inside our platform. It's great. We leverage referrals, but that's not how you build a scalable and sellable agency at the end of the day, right? Ultimately, you might want to sell your agency, and it has to have viability on its own, not just through referrals. A lot of them have long sales cycles. Everybody understands that. That's pretty common if you're hunting larger dollar amounts. Reactive versus proactive selling, right? So again, this is either you're waiting for stuff to come in or you're replying to RFPs, and passive selling that only can get you so far. And I already talked about limited marketing efforts, right? The carpenter's house is never clean. So these are a lot of the common contributors to the challenge of scaling and continuously growing. And these are the huge threats to small to mid-sized agencies. Tons of you go out of business every year because you're not addressing these at the root cause and attacking the problem. I always tell with our clients in any verticals, obviously we have clients in all verticals, agencies, consulting firms, SaaS companies. I mean, we have everybody, governments, but ultimately it's on the execution side of this, right? And that's where the rubber hits the road. So let's talk about two more challenges and threats to you, and then we'll get into some remediation strategies. And then I'll just show you how, for what I'd call very little work, can have a huge bottom line impact to your agency. I won't spend a long time here. Client environment, you know how it is. If you're really getting into partnerships with your clients, you're dealing with a lot of people. There's a lot of communication and collaboration needs, all sorts of things there, especially if you're going to enter through one product line or one service offering, and then you want to cross-sell, upsell within the client. This is going to be your life. Your life is having anywhere from 10 to 30 relationships, within the client environment. And so you got to start to build that penetration strategy to get more and more of those relationships and contacts, and that's just the reality, you know it. All right, so let's get into the fun. So proven models. So again, I would hope you would consider us in this journey as a solution for you, but ultimately many of these ideas you can think about and ideate and actually deploy in very simplistic matters. Ours Connected wins at a greater rate, but I do want to share with you the things we know that work. So when you're dealing with these kinds of clients, your clients, the expectations of the customers have changed. I have said this analogy 1,000 times, but if you order a pizza pie right now, you know, you can see it in the oven, you can see it being packaged, you can see it, you know, coming out of the oven, put in the car, everything, and you're monitoring an entire $10 transaction on your phone. And so the expectations of customers has dramatically changed. They want to feel like it's a bespoke experience during the sales process or the acquisition or project identification, and then all the way through delivery. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, bespoke for cross-sell, upsell, or what I was talking about earlier with productization, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, right? All of that jazz, right? So it's very, very important, the level of expectation, especially in a competitive market like you guys are in. There's you want to really separate yourself, and the experience to your brands and customers are mission critical. No matter what you're doing, please centralize everything into one place and do not consider emails to customers a formal way of selling, onboarding, delivering, or anything of that nature. If your account manager are doing that, you need to stop. A very large percentage of frustration that happens with agency relationships is the lack of visibility as to what's going on the project, and also inconsistent communication and collaboration with the project leads. It's just fact. And that area you can clean up pretty quickly, but that you're losing deals before they're even done. And so, yeah, it's just email is not a tool. It's inappropriately used in sales and delivery and cross selling. Just flat out is. Why I say the seamless communication for stronger relationships. That's more of a conciliary kind of mindset. And so a lot of agencies approach, and I'm not saying it's you guys on this call today, but a lot of agencies, while they say they're thinking long term for the client, they take on this real sentiment of a project, which seems timeline based and not as strategic. And so, really communicating and collaborating not only with the original leadership of the company on how you're helping, but also on the project level. This one's going to get a little more complicated for you guys, but again, it dramatically affects, and this is especially if the contracts are north of 50, 100,000, 200,000, $1 million. If you're really going after AORs or, other larger projects, we really, really recommend some sort of mutual plan strategy with the client, not only on the sales side of it when you're first identifying and laying out the project, but then also on the execution of it. And again, I'm not talking about working majig or traffic or every single day, these are the articles going out or any of that stuff. That's just pure operational stuff for you guys. What I'm talking about is at the client level, leadership level, where they're being informed and updated as to how the campaign is progressing or project is progressing or milestones that it's covering. And those all have to be done kind of in a mutual way. Of course, we have a system for mutual plans to execute that, to keep everybody aligned on expectations and other elements of just business relationships. But yeah, that's mission critical for your agency if you're not doing that on kind of more sophisticated deals or more, I always say biggie smalls, more money, more problems. If the project's worth more money, you better have one, because it will be the difference of whether or not you get project 2, which is the next one. And so leaning in really, really leaning in and thinking at this as a consultant based relationship for future opportunities, and laying out that cross sell, which is the next one on the here also, which is through ongoing engagement. So literally having an account plan or philosophy of how you're going to take clients through. After this project, we're then going to work on this one. And you're doing all this communication collaboration in a centralized place, obviously, heavily automated. I'll walk you through how this is done, but it works because it blocks other competitors from stealing your work and or clients, right? And that's where revenue comes from, right? So you just got to equip yourself for success. It's not complex. It just has to be continuous and fully connected to drive that home. So let me show you how we do this, because I think for many of you, you understand the problem. You understand it because you probably checked off 3 or 4 of those boxes for your own agency saying we could improve here, we could improve here, we could improve here. So what you're seeing on the screen here is what we call a workspace. All right, everybody. And what this is this is between your agency and one client named Falcon. Of course, this is all branded as your agency, all sorts of things here. That's not what we're not doing a demo here today, but I want you to kind of understand why by having a centralized environment for each customer, whether you're selling to them, currently operating with them, or they did a project with you last year and there's nothing active right now, you use these environments to share information with them and work with them on different business objectives to move them from, qualified to closed, all the way through, obviously, to cross-sell opportunities. And so a very, very common structure for a lot of our agency clients is they like to do project discovery within the platform, which is the identification of new projects or services that are going to be executed, and they use our checklist / mutual plan. There's all sorts of document sharing, video sharing, all sorts of features and functions inside this. Not today, I'm going to go through any of this, but it helps them architect a plan with the client to make sure you're on the same page during a new project execution. They frequently want to share other members of the team because your talent is obviously a big differentiator. Obviously, that's myself. We have many different modules, all sorts of things for sharing the team. Clearly, agencies also love to share related works. But again, this is all in a library function. This is loaded into our tool set once. And then based on the client type, project, or service you're offering, all of this is automated. So it's very little lift to get started. High bespoke experience to your client through all the different phases of your relationship. All right. And then you get into, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, a lot of our partners use us for delivery, which is complete deployment, checklist, plans, you name it. I mean, there's a whole system on how to onboard different projects and or services you're doing. Whether you're doing SEO or building a website, you can have different templates for the different projects. And this is keeping the leadership and everybody on the same page as to how things are progressing. And there's a tremendous amount of commenting, communication, and collaboration around this to help drive. We're also integrated with Slack and Teams and all sorts of stuff. Long story short, keeps everybody on the same page, so you're doing less firefighting and everybody's on point. Okay. If you clear that hurdle and you're now delivered your projects, you then get into maybe sharing resource libraries or hopefully impact and results, which might be your quarterly business reviews or monthly check-ins for campaign feedback, how you want to do that, whether you have different processes for this. This is how you start to then measure out and determine the impact of everything you're doing with your clients. So this structure, and again, this is just a simple one, but the structure here, this is one client. So this is your people from your agency, maybe the account lead and other folks. This is 3 or 4 people at the client. And of course, your goal is to get more and more people here because you're then going to cross-sell them on the next project, etc. You might share resources to them or articles or insights or tips from the leaders. I mean, there's a lot of tricks of the trade that we have that you can do at bulk. You don't have to do it by each one. I mean, like there's all sorts of behind the scenes things to really make a highly customized experience to your clients to drive that value. But the point is you can do this as a small to mid-size agency. It does not require a tremendous amount of effort. It's just taking the platform and executing the strategy for your client engagement for the year. And it's very, very easy to get started and do. But I just wanted to share because this is where a lot of the challenges, at least 5 of the top 12, 6 of the top 12 challenges for agencies all lie in these areas, especially when you're hiring new people, growing, or you have to change some staff. They're plugged into a reproducible system and process that basically gets you into that high engagement strategy in all phases of the business for you. So it's just real important to think through all the phases that I talked about there, because it literally starts with the project identification, carrying through all the way to not only delivery, but very, very important, that post-sale cross-sell into phase two, but also working this as a pool, big pool over the last 5 years. You've had X number of clients. You're going to be able to pull down projects for them. One of our agency clients was telling me about, before they came to us, they were having dinner with a client, and a very good client, a well-known global client, and the global client CEO basically said, "Hey, I'm really excited about this new thing we're doing," and the CEO named what it was, and our client at that, not now, not then, basically said, "Well, Mr. CEO, don't you know we do that?" And the CEO said, "No, I had no idea you guys do X." And the CEO, the other CEO said, "Well, yeah, we do that. I know we did this for you to start, but how do you not know that we do Y?" And he said, "We never heard from you guys about anything like that." And it was over, and it was already sold out, and a couple $1 million to another vendor. And so a lot of times with an agency, you come in under maybe a low hanging fruit service. You're at a most simplistic level, you're helping them with basic PR, article writing, or SEO, or web design, or a brochure. I mean, like, it can be, sometimes you just want to get in, right? But after you're in, you have to have a way to penetrate the organization and identify more stakeholders so that your methodology and services can get to the other departments, can get to the right people. So when they are thinking about a new product launch strategy, or a new digital strategy, a new global international website, you're aware of that, and you have first take at going after it, right? So you can only do that when you get the right stakeholders in the right environment and are continuously communicating with them and executing your strategies around that. Just trust me on that. The results are ridiculous. And so it's a little bit of a shift, because agencies, again, selling process and client process is frequently pocketized in agencies. An account director owns their own accounts. Of course, we can do all of that inside our tool, but you also want just to have an overall customer experience for an agency. And so I hope today you got some really good ideas here. Also, maybe you're a little mad because you're like, yeah, that's us. Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that, and that could help us. That's good. That's what it's all about. And I always say, Kia, Camry, Cadillac. You want to start simple, and then of course you can get better over time. Or the other one I say is, instead of boiling an ocean, boil a pot of water, and you'll get there pretty fast. So we also do help our clients with that, where we'll address some of the bleeding points first, and then over a period of time, compound interest, do even more. But I have to say, with great, great confidence, I know this can substantially affect the bottom line of the agency, not only in net new, but also cross sell, also satisfaction of the customer, and ultimately efficiency for your agency. Because again, behind the scenes here, there's a lot of templates, a lot of processes built in, all sorts of stuff for reminders, automations that will make your teams, we see on average about 30% more efficient in customer engagement. And of course, the customers, that's a whole nother thing. They love it because of, for a whole lot of reasons. So again, appreciate the time today. Hopefully some good nuggets of knowledge for you related to helping you scale your small to mid-sized agency. At the end of the day, we know you have limited resources, limited time, but you want to grow. And that's how our platform and processes basically behind here fit. So one of the things I do offer in every one of our webinars is a free consultation with myself, because I just have extensive experience in this agency space. And I'm not going to sell you. I just want to know about your agency, and I might be able to prescribe back to you, knowing what we know and have in all of our templates, a very easy model for you to deliver. If you're wondering, yeah, Joe, this sounds great. What would this cost my small to mid-sized agency? Probably between $100 and $200 a month, just depending on some of the things you're doing. So I can show you ROI in that in a matter of about 5 seconds. So that's why we're so successful. So again, I appreciate everybody's time. I'll include the PowerPoint, the demos, and some of the other resources. I appreciate your time, effort, and energy. Look forward to individually meeting you and helping you kind of brainstorm a simple strategy to really affect the outcomes of your group. So again, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the week.